So allow me to pose the first question to Alice, as you know, we have already started that one. So Alice, what do you think? What are your viewpoints on data protection in the African banking sector? What do you think that the data protection, how we can actually protect that one, and what are your views on this one? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Faheem. I'm very glad to be here and to be part of this discussion. We've been very, very quick at taking on or adopting various technologies, and not only actually in the banking sector, but all sectors. But how many people are actually conscious about the kind of technology, the kind of cybersecurity vulnerabilities that we face in this age? I thought that was extremely brilliant. For the banking sector, I think this whole industry of data protection is extremely key for, I guess, any bank, because you have to first understand what is the reasons why cybersecurity is important for every institution, or specifically for banks or other financial institutions. One, because they carry very, very important information about customers, and the attackers actually know that. So it's important, definitely, for banks or financial institutions to have the most robust cybersecurity in place. And why again is it important? You're looking at the impact in case of any data breaches, any leakages. What also the kind of penalties that are available in case of non-compliance, and the loss of time and money for the consumers in case of any data breaches or any cyber attack. And also, of course, just understanding how important and sensitive the data for the consumer is. So in Africa, generally, I would say before, like again, the previous speaker mentioned that regulators were very, very, very reluctant to come up with some kind of regulations that govern this industry. But as of, I guess, the last 2 years, we've seen so many African countries passing data protection regulations. I would say I'll take still that with a pinch of salt, because right now we have about like 20 countries that have data protection regulations or laws, but very few of them, again, are still at the implementation level. So there's some kind of definite lack of enforcement. There are very few regulations that have been implemented. What we see mainly is implementation of the GDPR, which is quite absurd, but and this is, of course, it's quite absurd that our regulations, local regulations, are not being implemented as fast as they should. And most companies, institutions, countries are benchmarking or using the GDPR. Why the GDPR? Because the GDPR seems to have, like, I think, more restrictions and more, like, of course, strict provisions. So what most institutions do, they would rather be protected. Actually, if you're protected by the GDPR, in most cases, you'll end up being compliant with most of the local regulations. So that's why I think most companies do it. And also, when you look at the financial sector, a lot of the finances are go through different jurisdictions, and the financial sector is also by international players. So you cannot, if I could be in Uganda, I could have a bank in Uganda, it could be part of a branch of a bigger financial institution. So there's no way they can actually avoid the GDPR. So what I can actually say, generally in Africa, you find that most of the data protection regulations or law or policies have been extracted from the GDPR. But at least the good thing is that, like I mentioned, that we have at least 22 countries right now which have data protection regulations.
Thank you, Alice. Wonderful answer on the compliance and the data protection also. Let me ask one question from the Ken, from the consumer experience point of view. That what does consumer experience matters now more than ever before? What do you think on the consumer experience, Ken?
Thanks, Faheem. So consumer experience or customer experience, for me, it's actually it's more than just about the user interface. So I think normally when you talk about customer experience, we're talking about how quickly can I log onto my banking profile? How long does it take me to just the turnaround time? But I think now it just goes a little deeper in terms of defining more about how safe and how respected a customer feels, just in terms of how we as organizations are managing and protecting their data, which is their most valuable asset, right? To Alice's point, with all the proliferation of all that data protection, data privacy legislation across the globe, not least in Africa, we find that the focus of these legislations is actually on protecting customers' experience. So as much as we use legal terms and all that, ultimately, the bottom line is we're actually trying to manage customers' experience and protect customers' rights. So we're finding that, obviously in this digital age, consumers are much more well-read and are much more informed and naturally much more savvy now than they ever were before. So this thing about customer experience definitely keeps coming back, and it's actually much more important now because people are much more informed. They know their rights, So a lot of organizations where a lot of these privacy and protection legislation has been rolled out are starting to interact a lot with their customers, where customers are demanding, to exercise their rights, just in terms of the quality of the information that the organizations hold on them. How current is it? Is it accurate? I objected to this 5 years ago, but you're still sending me all this material now. That wasn't happening before. People were basically just dealing with whatever the organizations who held the information threw at them. But now people are much more savvy to that. And I think just another related point is obviously over the past couple of years with the digital acceleration that's taken place, the digitization of the marketplace, you find that, in the old world where you actually walked into a store to actually interact, your customer experience was based on the level of service you received, just the display, the layout, the aesthetics, if you will. But now in the digital marketplace, I think the main currencies we speak about are, it has to be trust and it has to be that customer experience. So trust, obviously, do I trust you enough to protect those my most precious asset, which is my data? And then secondly, just in terms of the customer experience, do you respect me enough? Do you respect my preferences? If I've set preferences to say, all I want is you to send me information on this, and I don't want you to market me on that, and I want you to call me at such and such a time on this number, are we actually listening to the customer and actually respecting to actually enhance that overall customer experience? Now, this just the last point I want to make around customer experience is, again, in the digital age, bad news travels fast. Social media is used for a lot of stuff. From selfies and all that to just naming and shaming. So a lot of organizations will find themselves in the court of Twitter, which is it's so much harder to defend yourself in such a place because already you're starting off on the back foot. People have already put the word out that company X is very irresponsible when it comes to managing customer data, and as an organization, you find you're already on the back foot, and you have to now respond and actually manage the customer down, not just that customer, but everyone else who would have read some of those posts. So, yeah, that's why I think customer experience is much more important now than it's been in the past.
Thank you, Ken. You were rightly saying that, the code of Twitter, that is actually the hard to manage in terms of the customer experience. I really like that point. So at least I want to connect the dot again from the customer experience again, because, everything which is rotating is with the customer experience, the security, the compliance, the legal part, the regulatory part, all is actually, rotating to the customer's experience. Sometimes we bring, the number of compliance part. Sometimes we bring number of the regulatory part from our policy developers. And sometimes we bring, number of regulatory or policy issues within our organization to protect our customer, to protect our customers' data, to protect our privacy issues, to protect our confidentiality issues and other, areas. So how we can balance between the customer experience and the compliance part now? Not the security, I mean the compliance part, how we can balance both together and make it explain to our customers that that is also important for your protection. So what is your advice or suggestions to our audience?
Well, finding the balance has to come from a point of transparency. If your customers are aware why you most probably divide their data from one platform to another, then it would be much easier for them actually to understand and feel like their personal data is being respected, like Ken mentioned, and there's some kind of trust. In most cases, the conflict comes from lack of trust. Like, what is this financial institution or organization doing with my data? You also find that some institutions actually reuse or repurpose the customer's data without the consent, which is a very, very key aspect in data protection policy, whereby if I provide data to my bank, whenever they need to repurpose it, whenever they need to use it for anything else, they have to come back to me and seek consent. But then you find that that is just sometimes never clear. And of course, many of these things, like it could be a bank has introduced another product and you're quick to sign up. This is again not a problem for the bank. It's also a problem in the digital era, or where we are, where human beings are genuinely overwhelmed with data. So they just cannot even go through the policies, because usually the policies are there and they're kind of very clear. You know what they call the small print? Usually before the digital era, the real digital era, we used to have a lot of paperwork, and there's some small print. And whenever there's a conflict, you find that actually the small print was never read. Now, in this case, because people are fatigued, are overwhelmed with so much data, they end up just clicking, do you understand, and signing up to so many of these things. So you find we have gotten into a space as customers or consumers relating with the bank where actually the relationship is not like leveled, because we've given them so much power to use our data without actually our knowledge. So but what I've realized, most financial institutions, what they try to do is just being transparent and open, that okay, this is the next step, this is where, and be very slow. Actually, some institutions, they make sure that before you click accept, you've at least gone through the whole page, but still people just click and accept whatever terms and conditions. So I think for me, the issue of trust is extremely, extremely important for us to be able to find a balance in terms of, this is what the regulation requires, but also this is what we are doing as a financial institutions to ensure that your data is safe.
Safe and secure.
And
wonderful.
It's very, very safe and secure. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually like your point that we need to be very transparent, because sometimes assume that right now today you are doing the 1 second, tomorrow actually you have changed something, you have introduced another consent form or another form to be signed, but you are not telling the customer that this consent form or this form which we are actually getting your signature or your agreement, what is the use of that one. That's transparency, or that's explanation, or that knowledge is always, missing from our front side, staff from our bank. Rightly said, Alice, and I really like it. So Ken, maybe my last question, and then I will get your overall thoughts from both of you. So Ken, my question is that how much security, and it's more of the cybersecurity and all that. So how much security is too much actually? Because sometimes the security expert says that bring this security, TIC, OT, IT, DevOps, and all that. So how much security is too much for the user's experience, and what should be the right balance from your viewpoint?
Thanks again, Faheem. So yeah, look, that's always a trick question, right? How much is too much? And I guess it's just down to who determines that. A business is in business for a reason. They're there to make profits, for the most part anyway, to meet their shareholders' requirements, and so on. And the consumer is basically just consuming all these services or these facilities and these services. And the two need to meet somewhere in the middle, right? So how much is too much? I think it's all situational. You can't say that a firewall plus two-factor authentication plus strong password is enough. It all depends on what impact that actually has on the customer's experience. So, as a processor or as a responsible party, it's incumbent upon us as organizations to make sure that we do everything within our power to secure and protect the customer's information. How we balance that with the customer's experience, we obviously need to find that fine line between over protection, over securing, which ends up souring the customer's experience, and being so flippant as to actually just minimize the security controls just in the name of actually just trying to up the customer's experience. So in my thoughts, we need to oversee our responsibilities. We need to discharge our responsibilities responsibly. That's what will help us stand in the court of law when the time comes. If we can prove that we've taken reasonable steps to actually protect and secure the customer's information, then that's as far as we can go. There's no 100% foolproof way of actually securing data. But I think another important part as well, which goes with it, is change management. I think a lot of organizations don't do enough in terms of that. So you need to walk the customer on the same journey as well. So we're doing this because of this. We're seeing all these threats, and this is what we're doing to actually protect you, the customer, from some of these negative experiences. So a lot of it is a huge change management component comes in terms of just educating your users on the benefits of these additional security or compliance measures. So if it's going to be MF, multi-factor authentication, you explain why we're doing this and why this actually makes it more secure for the customer. So yeah, I think it's just a matter of walking the journey with the customer, but also doing everything within your power to ensure that you handle and you store and you transmit all this customer data responsibly and securely.
That's true, Ken, and wonderfully covered. Because sometimes also in institutions, once they face a small incident, then they add lots of security and they forget, the customer, the end user, and then the end user actually suffers. And I really like your answer that you need to go step by step, going on, your change management steps and all that, so that you understand the business and also the consumer banking point of view. So thank you so much, both of us speakers. I would like, maybe you can share your final thoughts, and I would like to start from Elise first. Your final thoughts on the topic today in maybe next 2 minutes. Thank you.
I just wanted to just give a small comment on my experience from what Ken has said. Recently, the bank I use introduced something called Trust Factor. I don't know if you know it. But anyway, so I've been very, very frustrated by it. Of course, I know definitely to secure my information, and so that you don't need the passwords, I think, on your phone to be the approval to be sent directly on your phone. So you go through an app called Trust Factor, but it's been very, very frustrating. And the bank just woke up one day and introduced this kind of thing. Up to now, you understand, I have engaged them, I've called them, it's just not solved. I'm just not able to get my transfer money from my bank to my phone. I don't know if Ken, you're aware of mobile money. Yeah, it should be actually. Yes, from. So it's been a very, very frustrating experience, but like it was just a one-day affair, and I'm like, oh my goodness. Okay, I know, being a cybersecurity expert, I know definitely where they're coming from. But this is just one of me, you understand? And I try to be like tech savvy, so I can't imagine all the what the other customers are experiencing. Anyway, I just wanted to talk about lack of compliance and why actually there's a lot of non-compliance that is from the user, the bank, the financial institutions, and also the users, the customers. First of all, it's generally lack of awareness. That is something we are suffering from on the continent. There's lack of awareness of these security threats. Unfortunately, even with the increase of the use of the internet, this has been accelerated by the impact of COVID. So many people are have been forced to migrate to using the internet to transact anything. But despite that, there's very little awareness on the vulnerabilities we face in the cyber world, and our government's doing something about driving some kind of campaigns. Some governments are also not aware. That's also now the challenge, is that the regulators are not aware of the actual threats. The enforcers, meaning even some jurisdiction where we've come up with very good laws and beautiful statutes, there's still lack of compliance. Why? Because the enforcement arm, that is the police, our judges, they're just not aware of what definitely they are dealing with, the magnitude of the problems they have. So meaning, if you had like a financial institution had suffered an attack, a cyber attack, if they went and reported the case to the police, in most countries, the police might have no idea how to deal with cyber crimes or cyber attacks. So some of these go undetected, and you can't follow up. I'll give you an example. In my country, even when you find some police officers have been trained and equipped, but then you'll find there's lack of. You go to a police station and they don't actually have enough data, you understand, to go online or to even carry out their investigations. You go to our courts, and most of our judges are not they've not upskilled to understand what actually cybersecurity is, what data protection is. So yes, you have the very excellent, beautiful laws, but then the enforcement arm is still very weak. And lastly, internally, in most of our financial institutions, the staff are not also trained. They don't have the knowledge of they might not have the knowledge of their actions, what their actions actually, the impact of their actions in terms of data breaches. People recklessly share information, passwords. These are now your staff, working with you internally. So I think the most important thing would definitely coming up with internal trainings is extremely key. This is some of the things that we advise our clients, hiring cybersecurity experts internally or data protection office internally to help you to navigate the laws, to help you come up with some kind of structured policies internally that create some kind of awareness with in staff, so that whatever even your staff do, they don't compromise, your security, because that's also extremely key in terms of compliance.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alice. Ken.
Thanks, Faheem. Look, just briefly, so for me, the legislation can only go so far. the weakest link is always going to be us the people, and whether we're talking about us the people as representatives of our organizations, or us the people as consumers, because we're also customers to other organizations. So the key is just knowledge. Just upskill yourself. Just know what your rights are, and obviously respect the customer's rights. You're working with conflicting agendas in the business. We need to watch the bottom line. But as consumers as well, we need to watch out for ourselves, because no one else is going to look out for us like we do. Yeah, that's all. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ken and Alice. It was a wonderful panel discussion. Personally, I actually enjoyed listening both of your responses, and I'm sure our audience is also enjoying. The 30 minutes I'm actually telling you is too less for this discussion. How to strike the balance between three, the customer experience, compliance, and again, the security part. In case if you want to replay the button of this panel discussion, there's a replay button on your left. Please click on that one and you can listen again. In case if you want to do one-to-one session with Alice and Ken, please join the networking and they will be there for you, and you can book an appointment with them, and then you can talk to them personally also in one-to-one session. Thank you so much, Alice and Ken, for your sharing your experience, and have a nice day. Please join this next session also. Thank you.
Thanks, Faheem. Thanks, Alice.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Faheem.